You know that moment when you're lying next to someone you love, but you've never felt more alone? Hi, I'm your host here at Where Hearts Rest, and today we're going to talk about something that might sound completely backwards. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to walk away from them. I know. That probably sounds harsh. Maybe even selfish. But before you click away, just take a breath with me for a second. Because what I'm about to share with you challenges everything we've been taught about love, commitment, and what it really means to care for someone. Here's the thing that blew my mind when I first discovered it. Some of the happiest, most fulfilled people I know are the ones who had the courage to leave relationships that were slowly killing their spirits. Not because they stopped loving, but because they started loving themselves enough to choose peace over chaos, growth over stagnation, truth over comfortable lies. Over the next hour, we're going to walk through what I call the 3 sacred gardens together. And by the end of our conversation, you'll understand why sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on tighter, it's having the wisdom and courage to let go. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into this together. I want you to imagine a garden. Not the kind of perfect garden you see on Instagram, but one that was once vibrant and is now slowly withering. The flowers are still trying to bloom, but the soil has been drained of nutrients. The trees are still standing, but their leaves have turned yellow, their branches brittle and dry. That's the perfect image of a relationship when love becomes a prison. And I know what you're thinking. Prison, that's a pretty strong word. But hear me out. Because there's a profound difference between loving someone and clinging to them. Between caring and controlling. Between staying because you love them and staying because you're afraid. Have you ever felt like you were suffocating in the very relationship you cherished most? Like you were slowly losing yourself, piece by piece, just to keep everything from falling apart? Take a deep breath with me. In and out. I want to tell you about a couple I once knew. They loved each other. Really loved each other. But over time, that love started to have rules. Boundaries. Shoulds and shouldn'ts. She wasn't allowed to laugh too loudly with male friends anymore. He wasn't allowed to pursue his music because it wasn't practical. She learned to stay quiet when she disagreed. He learned to say yes, even when his heart wanted to say no. And they called it love. They called it commitment. They called it sacrificing for the person you love. But here's what the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago, and it's still true today. When love becomes attachment, it's no longer love. It becomes the root of suffering. Can you see it? When you love someone so much that you feel like you can't live without them, that's not love. That's dependency. And dependency, no matter how sweetly it's wrapped in romantic words, is still a form of imprisonment. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, in your most recent relationship, did you feel free to be yourself? Or did you feel like you had to play a role? The role of the perfect partner, always understanding, always patient, always ready to forgive. These are the signs our hearts often ignore, but our souls always recognize. You start feeling exhausted for no reason. Like you're carrying an invisible weight that no one else can see. You start doubting yourself. Am I asking for too much? Am I overthinking? Am I being selfish? You start living in the future. It'll get better when we get married. They'll change when we have kids. It'll be different when we move in together. And you know what? Maybe the most heartbreaking part is when you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back at you. Because you've sacrificed so much of yourself on the altar of a love that no longer nourishes you. But here's what I want you to understand, and I want you to listen carefully. You're not a bad person for feeling this way. You're not selfish for craving the freedom to breathe. And you're not a failure for starting to think that maybe, just maybe, you deserve more than this. In Buddhist tradition, there's a concept called loving kindness. It doesn't just mean being kind to others. It also means being kind to yourself. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is recognizing that you're living in a prison of your own making. Do you feel something in your chest tighten when I say this? That's your soul nodding. That's the deepest part of you saying, yes, I know. I've known for a long time. And you know what? Recognizing this isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because the first step to getting out of any prison is realizing you're in one. But here's what I haven't told you yet. The thing that most of us get wrong about recognizing this truth. We think that if love has become a prison, we have to be angry, resentful. We have to blame. But actually, the most miraculous thing happens when we recognize the truth with compassion. When we can look at the relationship and say, I love you. And because I love you, I can't continue participating in something that's hurting both of us. And that's when real love begins. Not love based on need, but love based on freedom. But how do we get there? How do we move from recognition to action? From understanding to courage? That's exactly what we're going to explore next, as we step deeper into the garden of recognition, where the whispers of your soul finally get heard. But first, I need you to do something with me. I need you to place your hand on your heart and feel it beating. That heart has been trying to tell you something for so long. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to start listening. Because here's what I've learned after years of studying ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Your heart always knows the truth. Always. It's just that we've gotten really good at drowning out its voice with fear, with obligation, with the story we tell ourselves about what love is supposed to look like. But love isn't supposed to hurt. Love isn't supposed to diminish you. Love isn't supposed to make you feel like you're walking on eggshells in your own life. Real love? Real love sets you free. Even when that freedom means walking away. And that's not the end of love. That's not giving up on love. That might just be the truest act of love you've ever experienced. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about commitment, about loyalty, and about what it really means to love someone so much that you're willing to let them go. Have you ever been in a crowded room but still felt completely alone? Ever found yourself laughing and talking, but some part inside you was screaming? That's the whisper of your soul. And it's been trying to tell you something for a very long time. But we've learned to tune out those whispers, haven't we? We call them negative thoughts. We tell ourselves we're overthinking. We use busyness, work, Netflix, anything to avoid having to listen. Why? Why are we so afraid of hearing our own voice? Take a deep breath with me again. In and out. I want you to know something. Your soul never lies. Never. It doesn't know how to hide, doesn't know how to be polite, doesn't know how to be socially appropriate. It only knows truth. And truth can sometimes be terrifying. Maybe your soul is whispering, "I'm not happy." And your mind immediately fights back, "But they're a good person. I can't ask for more than that." Maybe your soul is whispering, "I feel like I'm disappearing." And your mind says, "That's what love requires. Sacrifice. Compromise." Maybe your soul is whispering, "I want to leave." And your mind panics, "No, I'm a bad person if I think that." But stop for a moment. Stop and ask yourself, who taught you that your inner voice wasn't trustworthy? From childhood, we're taught that love means never giving up. That commitment means holding on no matter what. That real love means accepting anything. But that's not love. That's surrender. And while we're busy learning lessons about forever love and happily ever after, our souls are crying, screaming, begging for help. Will you try something with me? I want us to do a small exercise together. It'll only take a few minutes, but it might change how you listen to the voice inside you. Find a comfortable position. If you can, close your eyes. If not, just look down at your hands. Now, place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Feel your breath. Don't try to change anything. Just observe. Breathe in and out. And now, I want you to ask yourself a simple question. Don't think about the answer. Just let the question float in your mind. What does my soul want to say? Sit quietly in the silence. Count 5 breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you hear anything? It might not be in words. It might just be a feeling, an image, a memory, a sudden tear. Don't judge whatever you receive. Don't analyze. Just acknowledge. Because here's what I've learned. The soul doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in emotions, in intuition, in dreams you keep dismissing, in songs that make you cry for no reason, in that restless feeling when people ask, "Are you happy?" And do you know the signs that your soul is ready for change? You start crying when you hear songs about freedom, about strong women, about men finding themselves again. You start noticing happy couples and wondering, why don't I feel that way? You start dreaming about a different life. Not with someone else, but just different. Freer. Lighter. More real. You start getting angry when people say, marriage is about putting up with things. Because something inside you knows, no, it shouldn't be like that. And here's the biggest sign. You start caring about yourself more. You start thinking, what do I deserve? Instead of, what can I endure? In Buddhist philosophy, we believe that everyone has Buddha nature, an infinite source of wisdom within. And that Buddha nature always knows the path to true happiness. Not temporary happiness. Not fake happiness. But deep, lasting happiness that comes from living in alignment with your true nature. And maybe, just maybe, your soul has known that path all along. It's just waiting for you to stop long enough to listen. Because here's the truth that took me years to understand. You don't need anyone else to tell you what you need. You don't need permission from family, from friends, from society. You just need the courage to trust your inner voice. And when you start trusting that voice, when you start listening to the whispers of your soul, everything begins to change. Not just in your relationship, but in your entire life. But before we talk about change, we need to talk about the thing most of us fear most when we think about listening to our souls. We're afraid to look in the mirror and see the truth. The truth about whose life we've been living. The truth about what we've sacrificed. And the truth about whether it might be too late to change. But I have good news for you. It's never too late. And the mirror I'm about to show you won't reflect your fears. It will reflect truth. And truth, no matter how painful, is always the beginning of freedom. You see, there's a moment that comes in every awakening journey. A moment when you stop running from what you know and start running toward it. When you stop asking, what will people think, and start asking, what does my heart need? And that moment, that beautiful, terrifying moment, is closer than you think. Stay with me, because what we're about to discover next will show you exactly what happens when you finally look in the mirror of truth. And I promise you, what you see there isn't your brokenness. It's your power. There comes a moment in every awakening when you can no longer pretend. When the stories you've been telling yourself start to crumble. When the mirror you've been avoiding finally forces you to look. And that mirror, it doesn't lie. I want you to imagine standing in front of a mirror right now. But this isn't any ordinary mirror. This is the mirror of truth. It shows you not just how you look, but how you're living. Not just your face, but your soul. What do you see? Do you see someone who's thriving? Someone who wakes up excited about their day? Someone whose eyes sparkle when they talk about their relationship? Or do you see someone who's surviving? Someone who's learned to smile even when their heart is breaking? Someone who's become an expert at saying, "I'm fine," when everything inside is screaming? Take a breath with me, because what I'm about to share might sting a little. But sometimes, we need to feel the sting before we can find the healing. Here's what the mirror of truth shows us that we've been too afraid to see. You see the version of yourself that learned to make excuses for behavior that should never be excused. They're just stressed from work. They don't really mean it. Everyone has their bad days. You see the version of yourself that started believing that asking for basic respect was asking for too much. That wanting to feel loved was being needy. That expecting kindness was being unrealistic. You see the version of yourself that began measuring love by how much you could endure rather than how much joy you could experience. And maybe the hardest thing to see? You see the dreams you gave up. The parts of yourself you buried. The person you used to be before you learned that being small was safer than being yourself. But here's what I need you to understand, and this is crucial. Seeing these things doesn't make you weak. It makes you awake. There's a beautiful teaching in Buddhism about right understanding. It's the first step on the path to enlightenment. And right understanding begins with seeing clearly. Not through the lens of what we hope is true or what we wish was true, but what actually is true. And the truth is this: you have been living a life that's smaller than what your soul was designed for. Now, I know what your mind might be doing right now. It might be fighting back, making a list of all the reasons why your situation is different, why you can't change, why you should be grateful for what you have. And that's okay. That's normal. Because change is terrifying. Even good change. Even necessary change. But let me ask you something. How long are you willing to live as a fraction of who you really are? How many more mornings are you going to wake up and pretend that the ache in your chest is normal? How many more nights are you going to lie next to someone and feel completely alone? How many more years are you going to wait for someone else to change so that you can finally breathe? Here's what the mirror of truth reveals that changes everything: the person you've been waiting for them to become. The person who will finally see you, value you, choose you. That person has been there all along. It's you. You are the person who can see your worth. You are the person who can choose your happiness. You are the person who can love you enough to make different choices. want you to feel something with me right now. Place your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. That heart has been beating for you every single day of your life. It has never given up on you. Not once. Even when you gave up on yourself. Even when you accepted less than you deserved. Even when you forgot who you were. Your heart kept beating, kept hoping, kept believing that one day you would remember. This is that day. The mirror of truth isn't showing you these things to shame you. It's showing you these things to free you. Because you cannot change what you cannot see. You cannot heal what you will not acknowledge. And you cannot love yourself if you keep pretending that you're living the life you were meant to live. So what happens now? What happens when you can finally see clearly? This is where most people make a crucial mistake. They see the truth, and they immediately want to run back to the familiar. Because the familiar, even when it's painful, feels safer than the unknown. But here's what I've learned. There's no going back once you've seen the truth. You can try to unsee it, but you can't. It's like trying to believe in Santa Claus again after you've found the presents in your parents' closet. The truth, once seen, demands action. Not impulsive action. Not angry action. But conscious, loving action. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Because recognition is just the first garden. Now comes the sacred work of letting go. Of releasing not just the relationship that's been draining your soul, but the version of yourself who believed that was all you deserved. The garden of release is waiting. And I promise you, what you'll discover there isn't just how to leave what's been hurting you. You'll discover how to step into who you've always been meant to be. But first, I need you to do something with me. I need you to look in that mirror of truth one more time and say these words, out loud if you can, or silently if you must. I see you. I see your pain. I see your strength. And I promise, I'm going to take better care of you starting right now. Because that's what love really is. Not clinging to what diminishes you, but having the courage to choose what honors the sacred life you've been given. Are you ready? Because what comes next is where the real transformation begins. Welcome to the second garden. If the garden of recognition was about seeing clearly, then the garden of release is about something far more challenging. It's about having the courage to act on what you've seen. And I'll be honest with you, this is where most people turn back. Because recognition is painful, but release requires something that terrifies us to our core, faith in the unknown. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any deeper. Letting go isn't about destruction. It's about liberation. It's not about ending love. It's about freeing love from the chains we've wrapped around it. Think about a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. The process looks violent from the outside. It looks like something is being destroyed. But what's actually happening? Transformation. The caterpillar isn't dying. It's becoming what it was always meant to be. That's what we're talking about here. Not the death of love, but its transformation into something truer. Take a breath with me. In and out. Now, I need to tell you something that might shock you. In all my years of studying relationships, working with people who've walked this path, here's what I've discovered. The people who are most afraid of letting go are often the ones who need it most. Why? Because we've confused attachment with love. We've been taught that if we really love someone, we should be willing to fight for them no matter what. We should never give up. We should hold on until our knuckles are white and our hearts are bleeding. But here's what the Buddha understood 2,500 years ago, and what modern psychology is finally catching up to. Attachment and love are not the same thing. In fact, they're often opposites. Attachment says, I need you to be happy. Love says, I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. Attachment says, I can't live without you. Love says, I'm whole on my own, and I choose to share that wholeness with you. Attachment says, you must change to meet my needs. Love says, I accept you as you are, and I accept that we might not be right for each other. Can you feel the difference? Can you feel how much lighter that second version feels? Now, let me share with you the sacred art of letting go. And yes, I call it an art because it requires the same thing that all great art requires: vision, patience, and the willingness to create something beautiful from raw material. The first step is understanding what you're actually letting go of. Most people think they're letting go of the person they love. But that's not what you're releasing. You're releasing the story you've told yourself about what this relationship should be. You're releasing the fantasy that if you just love hard enough, sacrifice deep enough, that you can change another person's capacity to love you back. You're letting go of the version of yourself that believed you had to earn love instead of simply being worthy of it. The second step is recognizing that letting go is not a betrayal. It's a sacred act of honesty. When you stay in a relationship that's draining both of you, you're not being noble. You're being dishonest. You're lying to yourself about what's possible, and you're lying to them about what you're willing to accept. But when you have the courage to say, "I love you enough to stop participating in something that's hurting us both," that's not giving up. That's growing up. Here's something I want you to try with me right now. It's a practice that comes from ancient Buddhist meditation, but I've adapted it for exactly where you are right now. Close your eyes if you can, or just soften your gaze. Place both hands on your heart and feel it beating. This is your life force. This is the part of you that has never given up on you. Now, imagine the relationship that's been weighing on your heart. Don't think about it. Just hold it gently in your awareness, like holding a bird in your hands. And now, imagine slowly opening your hands. Not throwing the bird away. Not crushing it. Just opening your hands and allowing it the freedom to fly. Feel that sensation in your body. The mixture of fear and relief. The terror of empty hands and the lightness of no longer gripping so tight. Breathe into that feeling. Because that's what letting go actually feels like. Scary and liberating at the same time. But here's what I haven't told you yet. Here's the part that most people don't understand about the sacred art of letting go. You don't let go once. You let go over and over and over again. You let go when you wake up in the morning and your first instinct is to check if they've texted you. You let go when you see something that reminds you of them and you want to share it. You let go when you're having a bad day and you want to call them for comfort. Letting go is not a destination. It's a practice. And like all spiritual practices, it gets easier the more you do it. And here's the beautiful thing that happens when you master this practice. You don't just learn to let go of relationships that aren't serving you. You learn to let go of anything that's keeping you small. Bad jobs, toxic friendships, family patterns that drain your energy, the need to be perfect, the fear of being alone. You become free in a way that most people can't even imagine. But I want to prepare you for something. When you first start practicing the art of letting go, your mind is going to panic. It's going to create story after story about why you should hold on. It's going to show you every good memory, every moment of potential, every reason why this time might be different. and that's okay. That's normal. Your mind's job is to keep you safe, and familiar suffering feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. But here's what your mind doesn't understand. You're not letting go because you stopped loving. You're letting go because you finally learned how to love yourself. And self-love, true self-love, never asks you to accept less than what feeds your soul. Are you starting to feel it? That shift that happens when you move from clinging to releasing, from grasping to allowing, from demanding that someone else complete you to discovering that you were already whole. That's not the end of your capacity to love. That's the beginning of your capacity to love freely. But here's what comes next, and this is where it gets really interesting. Because once you learn to let go of the relationship, you have to learn to let go of something even harder. You have to let go of the version of yourself who believed that being in that relationship was all you deserved. And that old version of you, she's been with you for so long that releasing her might feel like losing yourself entirely. But I promise you, what you'll discover on the other side isn't loss. It's rebirth. Here's what no one tells you about walking away from someone you love. The hardest person to leave behind isn't them. It's the version of yourself who believed that love was supposed to hurt. That version of you has been with you for so long. She's the one who learned to apologize for things that weren't her fault. Who learned to make herself smaller so others could feel bigger. Who convinced herself that being needed was the same as being loved. And now you have to say goodbye to her. This might be the most difficult part of your entire journey. Because that version of you, let's call her your old self, she kept you safe in the only way she knew how. She helped you survive. She helped you stay connected to someone you loved, even when that connection was slowly killing you. She's not your enemy. She's actually been your protector. But now she's the very thing standing between you and the life you were meant to live. Take a breath with me. Because what I'm about to ask you to do might make you cry. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to grieve the parts of ourselves we have to leave behind before we can celebrate the parts we get to become. I want you to think about who you were before this relationship that's been draining you. Not just this romantic relationship. Maybe it's a friendship, a family dynamic, a work situation. Think about who you were before you learned to twist yourself into impossible shapes to fit someone else's needs. Do you remember her? That version of you who laughed without calculating whether it was too loud? who had opinions without checking if they were acceptable, who took up space without apologizing for existing. What did she love? What made her eyes light up? What dreams did she have that she hasn't spoken about in years? Now I want you to think about the version of you who exists in this draining relationship. The one who's learned to read micro-expressions like a detective, who can sense the slightest shift in mood and immediately adjusts her behavior, who has become an expert at managing someone else's emotions while completely ignoring her own. This version of you is exhausted, isn't she? Because she's been doing a job that was never supposed to be hers, making someone else responsible for her worth, and making herself responsible for someone else's happiness. In Buddhist philosophy, we talk about false self and true self. The false self is who we become when we're driven by fear, by the need to be accepted, by the terror of being alone. The true self is who we are when we're connected to our own inner wisdom, our own power, our own inherent worth. And here's what I've learned. You cannot access your true self while you're still operating from your false self. They cannot coexist. One has to die for the other to be born. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." He wasn't talking about physical death. He was talking about the death of who we think we need to be so that who we truly are can finally emerge. So how do we release the old you? How do we honor her for keeping you safe while also letting her go so you can be free? We start with compassion. Place your hands on your heart again. And I want you to speak to that old version of yourself like you would speak to a dear friend who's been through hell for you. You might say something like this: "Thank you. Thank you for trying so hard to make it work. Thank you for believing that if you just loved enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, that you could create the love you deserved. Thank you for holding on when everything in you wanted to let go. Thank you for protecting me the only way you knew how." Feel that for a moment. The gratitude for how hard that old version of you tried. But I want you to know that I'm strong enough now to take care of myself. I'm wise enough now to know the difference between love and attachment. I'm brave enough now to choose what honors me, not just what's familiar. So, I'm going to let you rest now. You've carried this burden long enough. It's time for me to step forward as the person I was always meant to be. This isn't a one-time conversation. You'll need to have it again and again. because that old self will try to come back, especially when things get uncertain. She'll whisper things like, maybe you should just try one more time, or maybe you're being too picky, or maybe this is as good as it gets. And when she does, you can acknowledge her with love, but you don't have to obey her with your life choices. Here's what starts to happen when you begin releasing the old you. You start noticing things you haven't noticed in years. Colors seem brighter. Food tastes better. You remember that you used to love dancing, or reading poetry, or taking long walks without your phone. You start having thoughts that begin with, I wonder what would happen if, instead of I can't because. You start feeling angry about things that you used to just accept. And that anger, that's not a bad thing. That's your true self waking up and saying, hey, this isn't okay with me. You start setting boundaries that the old you would have been too scared to set. And you start feeling less guilty about having needs and more curious about getting them met. But here's the thing that might surprise you the most. As you release the old you don't become a different person. You become more yourself than you've ever been. All those qualities you thought you'd lost, they were just buried under years of trying to be who you thought you needed to be. The woman who was confident before she learned to doubt herself, she's still there. The woman who was curious before she learned to play it safe, she's still there. The woman who was powerful before she learned to make herself small, she's still there. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering someone you've always been. But remembering who you are is just the first step. Now comes the part that requires more courage than anything you've ever done. You have to actually become her. You have to walk away not just from the relationship that's been diminishing you, but from every pattern, every habit, every choice that keeps you small. And that, my friend, is where we discover what you're truly capable of. This is the moment. This is where everything we've talked about becomes real. Where recognition becomes action. Where wisdom becomes courage. Where you stop being someone who knows what she deserves and become someone who actually chooses it. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is terrifying. Not because walking away is wrong, but because walking away requires you to trust yourself more than you trust your fear. And if you're like most people, you've been in a relationship with your fear longer than you've been in a relationship with your own power. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and choosing love anyway. Even when that love requires you to step into the unknown, even when that love requires you to disappoint other people. Even when that love requires you to choose yourself when everyone else is telling you to choose them. Let me tell you what courage looks like in real life. Because it's probably not what you think. Courage isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself with grand gestures or angry speeches. It simply chooses differently. Courage is saying, "I can't do this anymore," in a voice so calm it surprises you. Courage is packing your things while your heart feels like it's breaking, but knowing that staying would break it even more. Courage is walking away without needing them to understand why. Courage is choosing uncertainty over settling. And here's the thing about courage that they don't tell you in the movies. It doesn't feel heroic while you're doing it. It feels like you're doing the hardest thing you've ever done. It feels like you're betraying everyone who ever told you that love means never giving up. But you're not betraying love. You're finally honoring it. Because real love, the kind that comes from Buddhist wisdom, the kind that actually heals people, real love is spacious enough to let someone go. Real love doesn't need to possess. Real love doesn't need to control. Real love says, "I care about you so much that I want you to be free, even if that freedom doesn't include me." Now, I need to prepare you for what happens when you actually start walking away. Because nobody talks about this part, and I wish someone had prepared me. First, every person who has been avoiding their own difficult choices is going to tell you you're making a mistake. They're going to list all the reasons why you should stay, all the ways you should try harder, all the evidence that you're being too picky or unrealistic about love. This isn't about you. This is about them. When you choose courage, you become a mirror for everyone around you who has chosen comfort. And mirrors can be uncomfortable. Second, you're going to doubt yourself approximately 1,000 times a day. You're going to remember every good moment, every time they seem to really see you, every possibility of what could have been different if you'd just tried one more thing. This is normal. This is your attachment system trying to pull you back to what's familiar. But remember, familiar isn't the same as right. Familiar isn't the same as healthy. Familiar is just familiar. Third, and this is the part that nobody tells you, you're going to feel guilty for being happy about your decision. There will be moments when you feel so light, so free, so relieved, and then immediately guilty for feeling that way about leaving someone you loved. Let me give you permission right now. It's okay to feel relief. It's okay to feel free. It's okay to discover that you're happier without them than you were with them. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. But here's what I really want you to understand about the courage to walk away. You're not just walking away from a person. You're walking away from every limiting belief you've ever had about what you deserve, what's possible, what love is supposed to feel like. You're walking away from the idea that you have to earn love by being perfect. You're walking away from the belief that your needs are too much. You're walking away from the story that says settling is mature and having standards is selfish. And when you walk away from all of that, you walk towards something extraordinary, a life that actually fits your soul. I want you to try something with me right now. It's a visualization that has helped thousands of people find the courage to choose themselves. Close your eyes and imagine yourself 1 year from now. You've walked away. You've done the scary thing. You've chosen uncertainty over settling. What does that version of you look like? How does she carry herself? What's different about her eyes? How does she speak about her life? Can you see her? Can you see the version of you who chose courage over comfort? Now imagine her looking back at you, right now, in this moment. What would she say to you? What would she tell you about the life that's waiting for you on the other side of this decision? I'll tell you what I think she'd say. You're so much stronger than you know. And you're so much closer to freedom than you realize. All you have to do is take the first step, and then the second, and then the third. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You just have to take the first step. That first step doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest. Maybe it's having the conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's setting the boundary you've been scared to set. Maybe it's simply saying, I need to think about some things, and taking space to actually think. Whatever it is, that first step is an act of love. Love for your future self. Love for the life you came here to live. Love for the person you were before you forgot that you deserve to be cherished, not tolerated. The Garden of Release has shown you something that most people never discover, that letting go isn't about giving up on love. It's about refusing to give up on yourself. But now comes something even more beautiful. Now comes the garden where you remember not just who you are, but who you're capable of becoming. The Garden of Renewal is waiting, and what you'll discover there will change not just how you love others, but how you love yourself. Are you ready? Because what comes next is where the real magic happens. Welcome to the third garden. If I'm honest, this is my favorite part of the entire journey. Because this is where you discover something that might shock you. The person you've been searching for in every relationship, the person you've been waiting for someone else to become, the person you've been hoping would finally see your worth and choose you. That person has been you all along. But here's what's beautiful about the Garden of Renewal. You don't meet a stranger. You meet someone you've always known but had forgotten. It's like running into your childhood best friend after years apart and realizing that underneath all the changes, all the growth, all the scars, the essence of who they are is exactly the same. That's what happens when you meet yourself again. You remember. Take a breath with me, because I want to tell you about the first morning. The first morning after you've made the decision. After you've had the conversation. After you've taken the step that your old self swore you'd never be brave enough to take. You wake up, and for just a moment, you forget. Your hand reaches across the bed expecting to find someone. Your mind immediately goes to, I should text them. Your heart does that little leap that says, oh no, what have I done? But then something else happens. Something quiet, but revolutionary. You realize that the anxiety you've been carrying in your chest for months, maybe years, it's not there anymore. You realize that you don't have to check your phone to see what mood you're going to need to manage today. You realize that you can make your coffee exactly how you like it, without worrying if someone's going to comment that it's too strong, too weak, too expensive, too whatever. And in that moment, you meet her again. The you who existed before you learned to shrink. The you who had preferences and opinions and dreams that didn't require anyone else's approval. She's been waiting for you. But here's what I need you to understand. Meeting yourself again isn't always comfortable at first. Because you've been living someone else's life for so long that your own life might feel strange. You might not remember what you actually like to do on weekends. You might not remember what kind of music makes you feel alive. You might not remember what your dreams were before you learned to make them smaller so they wouldn't threaten anyone. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's the beginning of the most beautiful rediscovery you'll ever experience. I want to tell you about Sarah, not her real name. Sarah had been in a relationship for 8 years, where she slowly, gradually, became someone she didn't recognize. She stopped singing because her partner said she was too loud. She stopped reading poetry because they said it was impractical. She stopped dancing in the kitchen because they called it weird. 3 months after she walked away, she called me crying. But not sad crying. Joy crying. I was making breakfast this morning, she said, and I started singing. Just singing. I haven't sung in 8 years. And I realized I have a good voice. How did I forget I have a good voice? That's what happens in the Garden of Renewal. You don't just remember who you are. You remember who you've always been capable of being. You start noticing things again. Really noticing. The way morning light hits your coffee cup. The feeling of grass under your feet. The sound of your own laugh when something genuinely amuses you instead of when you're trying to keep the peace. You start having thoughts that begin with, I wonder, instead of, I should, or I can't. I wonder what would happen if I took that art class. I wonder what it would be like to travel somewhere I've always wanted to go. I wonder who I'd be if I stopped apologizing for taking up space. And here's something beautiful that happens in the Garden of Renewal. You start to understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. Lonely is what you felt when you were in a relationship but couldn't be yourself. Alone is what you feel when you're by yourself and completely content with your own company. Lonely is desperate and needy and afraid. Alone is peaceful and creative and free. For the first time in years, maybe decades, you get to find out who you are when you're not performing for anyone. When you're not managing anyone's emotions. When you're not trying to be worthy of love because you finally understand that you already are. But I want to prepare you for something that happens in this garden that catches most people off guard. You're going to feel guilty for being happy. Your old programming is going to tell you that if you're happy without them, it means you never really loved them. That if you're thriving on your own, it means you're selfish. That if you're discovering joy in your own company, it means you're broken or weird or not meant for relationship. None of that is true. Your happiness is not a betrayal of your past love. Your joy is not evidence that you're incapable of love. Your thriving is not proof that you don't need connection. What it is proof that you were always whole. Always complete. Always worthy. You just forgot for a while because you got lost in the maze of trying to earn what was already yours. In Buddhist teaching, we have a concept called Buddha nature, the idea that every person has an inherent, unchangeable essence that is already perfect, already worthy, already whole. And that essence can get buried under layers of conditioning, fear, and false beliefs, but it can never be destroyed. The Garden of Renewal is where you remember your Buddha nature, where you stop trying to become worthy and start remembering that you already are. And here's the most beautiful part. When you truly understand your own worth, when you really get it in your bones, you stop being desperate for other people to see it. You stop needing external validation because you've found the source of validation within yourself. This doesn't make you arrogant or selfish. It makes you magnetic. Because people are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who know their own worth, who don't need to be rescued or fixed or completed. You become the kind of person who attracts love instead of chasing it, who draws in people who celebrate you instead of tolerate you, who magnetizes relationships based on joy rather than need. But before you can attract that kind of love from others, you have to learn to give it to yourself. And that's what the next part of this garden is about. Discovering what love looks like when it's not wrapped in fear, when it's not based on possession, when it's not trying to complete something that was never broken in the first place. Here's what nobody tells you about learning to love without attachment. It doesn't make you love less. It makes you love and better. When you've walked through the garden of recognition, when you've released what was keeping you small, when you've remembered who you are beneath all the conditioning, when you've done all of that, you discover something that will change the way you love forever. You discover that real love isn't something you do to get something back. Real love is something you are. Let me explain what I mean, because this might be the most important thing I share with you today. For most of your life, you've probably thought of love as a transaction. I give you my time, my energy, my body, my loyalty, and in return, you give me security, validation, companionship, the promise that I won't have to face life alone. But that's not love. That's a business arrangement. And like all business arrangements, when one party stops delivering what the other party wants, the whole thing falls apart. Real love, the kind that Buddha talked about, the kind that actually heals people, real love is what happens when you're so full, so complete, so at peace with yourself that you can love someone without needing anything from them in return. This probably sounds impossible if you've never experienced it. It might even sound cold or detached. But I promise you, it's the warmest, most connecting thing you'll ever experience. Let me tell you what love without chains looks like in real life. Love without chains is being genuinely happy when someone you care about succeeds, even if their success has nothing to do with you. Love without chains is wanting someone to be their fullest, truest self, even if that version of them doesn't fit into your life in the way you originally imagined. Love without chains is being able to disagree with someone without needing to change their mind or needing them to change yours. Love without chains is caring deeply about someone's well-being without making yourself responsible for their choices. Love without chains is being able to say, "I love you and I can't be in relationship with you right now," without it being a contradiction. Can you feel how different this is from what most of us learned about love? Most of us learned that love means sacrifice. That it means putting someone else's needs before our own. That it means being willing to diminish ourselves so someone else can feel bigger. But that's not love. That's self-abandonment disguised as virtue. Real love, love without chains, says, "I love myself enough to only engage in relationships that honor both of us. I love you enough to want you to be free, even if that freedom doesn't include me." Now, I want to share something with you that might challenge everything you think you know about loving someone from a distance. When you walked away from that relationship that was draining you, you didn't stop loving them. You actually started loving them more purely. Because for the first time, you were loving them without agenda, without need, without the desperate hope that they would become someone different so you could be happy. And here's what's miraculous about this kind of love. It changes everything. Not just for you, but for them too. When you stop trying to get someone to love you the way you want to be loved, when you stop making their behavior mean something about your worth, when you love them without needing them to love you back in any particular way, something in the energy between you shifts. They can feel it. Maybe not consciously, but they can feel that the desperate, grasping energy is gone. They can feel that you're not trying to change them anymore. They can feel that your love for them is no longer conditional on their behavior. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that's when they become curious about who you are when you're not trying to earn their love. But here's what's beautiful. By the time this happens, by the time they notice the change in you, you're not waiting for them to notice anymore. You're not loving them to get them back. You're loving them because love is who you are now, not something you do to get something back. This is what the ancient Buddhists called metta, loving kindness. It's love that doesn't depend on the object of love behaving in any particular way. It's love that flows from abundance, not scarcity. It's love that gives without keeping score. And the most beautiful part about developing this capacity for love without chains, it doesn't just change your relationship with the person you walked away from. It changes every relationship in your life. You stop trying to control your friends' choices and start simply enjoying their company. You stop taking your family's quirks personally and start finding them endearing. You stop needing your coworkers to validate your ideas and start contributing from your own sense of purpose. You become someone who loves from overflow instead of emptiness. Someone who gives from fullness instead of need. Someone who connects from strength instead of fear. And people notice. They notice that being around you feels different. Lighter. More spacious. More free. You become the kind of person that others want to be around, not because you need them to want that, but because you've become genuinely pleasant company for yourself. But here's what I want you to understand about this transformation. It doesn't happen overnight. Learning to love without chains is a practice. Some days you'll do it perfectly. Some days you'll catch yourself falling back into old patterns of trying to control outcomes, trying to earn love, trying to make someone else responsible for your happiness. And that's okay. That's part of the journey. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness. The goal is catching yourself when you start building chains and gently, lovingly, setting yourself free again. Because here's the truth. Every time you choose love without chains, you're not just freeing the person you're loving. You're freeing yourself. And every time you free yourself, you create space for something even more beautiful to emerge. What emerges is not just better relationships. What emerges is a life that ripples outward, touching everyone you meet, changing the world in ways you might never know about but that matter more than you could possibly imagine. Here's something that will blow your mind. When you finally learn to walk away from what doesn't serve you, when you develop the courage to choose yourself, when you discover how to love without chains, you don't just change your own life. You change every life you touch. And I mean that literally. Not metaphorically. Not in some abstract spiritual way. I mean that your decision to honor yourself, to refuse to settle, to choose healing over habit, creates actual, measurable changes in the lives of everyone around you. Let me tell you how. First, you give everyone in your life permission to do the same thing you just did. Your sister, who's been staying in a job that's crushing her soul, sees you walk away from a relationship that was crushing yours, and suddenly she starts updating her resume. Your friend, who's been accepting crumbs of affection from someone who doesn't appreciate her watches, you choose solitude over settling, and she finally has the conversation she's been avoiding for 2 years. Your daughter, if you have one, or will have one someday, grows up with a mother who showed her that loving yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. That having standards isn't being difficult, it's being wise. That walking away sometimes is the most loving thing you can do. You become a living example of what's possible when someone decides they're worth more than they've been accepting. But the ripple effect goes deeper than just inspiring others to make better choices. It actually changes the quality of every relationship you have going forward. Because when you know your worth, not intellectually, but in your bones, you show up differently in every interaction. You stop people pleasing and start people connecting. You stop performing worthiness and start simply being worthy. You stop seeking validation and start offering genuine appreciation. You stop trying to be interesting and become genuinely interested. And people can feel this shift. They can feel that you're not trying to get something from them anymore. You're not trying to prove anything, earn anything, avoid anything. You're just present. Real, authentic. This is magnetic in a way that trying to be likable never was. I want to tell you about Maria, not her real name. Maria walked away from a marriage that had been slowly draining her life force for 15 years. Everyone in her family was horrified. They told her she was being selfish, that she was giving up too easily, that she would never find anyone else at her age. 2 years later, not only had Maria built a thriving business doing work she loved, not only had she traveled to 3 countries she'd always dreamed of visiting, not only was she the happiest anyone had ever seen her, but something else happened. Her teenage daughter, who had been struggling with anxiety and low self-esteem, started standing up for herself at school. Her son, who had been getting into trouble trying to get attention, started channeling his energy into music and suddenly discovered he was talented. Her ex-husband, freed from the obligation to be someone he wasn't capable of being, started going to therapy and dealing with issues he'd been avoiding for decades. Even her sister, who had initially been furious with Maria for breaking up the family, called her 6 months later to say, "I don't know what you did, but watching you choose yourself gave me the courage to finally leave my toxic job. I start my new career next month." This is what I mean by the ripple effect. When you stop betraying yourself, you stop enabling others to betray themselves. When you start honoring your own truth, you create space for others to discover theirs. But here's the part that might surprise you the most. The person you walked away from, they get the gift too. I know this might be hard to believe right now. If you're in the early stages of walking away, it might feel like you're hurting them. It might feel like you're being cruel or selfish, or abandoning them in their time of need. But here's what I've seen happen over and over again. When someone finally stops accepting less than they deserve from you, it forces you to either rise to meet what they deserve or face the reality that you're not willing to do so. And both of those outcomes are gifts. If they rise to meet what you deserve, then they discover parts of themselves they didn't know existed. They develop capacities they didn't know they had. They become a better version of themselves. If they don't rise to meet what you deserve, then they have to face the truth about their own patterns, their own limitations, their own work to do. And while this might be painful in the short term, in the long term, it's the only way real growth happens. Either way, you've given them something that staying and accepting less never could have given them: the opportunity to become who they're capable of being rather than who they can get away with being. And this is where the ripple effect becomes something even more profound than personal transformation. This is where it becomes social transformation. Because every time someone chooses self-respect over settling, they raise the bar for everyone. Every time someone walks away from abuse, neglect, or simple incompatibility, they make it a little bit harder for that kind of behavior to find a willing participant. Every time someone demonstrates that they'd rather be alone than accept less than they deserve, they challenge the cultural narrative that says any relationship is better than no relationship. You become part of a quiet revolution. A revolution that says, we will no longer tolerate what diminishes us. We will no longer participate in dynamics that drain us. We will no longer accept scraps when we deserve the full meal. And this revolution doesn't happen with protests or petitions or political movements. It happens one person at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time. It happens when someone like you decides that loving yourself isn't just an option anymore. It's a requirement. The ripple effect of your decision to walk away from what doesn't serve you will touch lives you'll never know about. It will inspire changes you'll never see. It will create possibilities you'll never imagine. But the most important ripple of all, the one that matters more than any other, it's the ripple that comes back to you. The life you get to live because you were brave enough to choose it. The love you get to experience because you became someone who knows they deserve it. The peace you get to feel because you finally came home to yourself. That ripple doesn't just change the world. It changes everything. We've walked through 3 sacred gardens together. From the garden of recognition, where you learn to see truth clearly, through the garden of release, where you found the courage to let go of what no longer serves your soul. And finally, to the garden of renewal, where you met yourself again, the person you've always been, you just temporarily forgot. And now, as this journey comes to a close, I want you to place your hand on your heart and feel that beating. That's the sound of life, of freedom, of a heart that finally remembered it deserves to be loved. Maybe today you're still not ready to make any big changes. Maybe you're still scared, still doubting, still wondering. And that's completely okay. The seeds have been planted. In the days ahead, the weeks ahead, maybe the months ahead, you'll start noticing small signs. You'll start saying no to things that make you feel bad about yourself. You'll start saying yes to things that make your soul feel alive. You'll remember that love never asks you to become someone else. True love always invites you to become the fullest version of yourself. And in those moments when you feel lonely, in those moments when you doubt your decisions, remember that sometimes walking away isn't giving up on love. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do. If today's conversation has touched your heart, if you feel less alone in this journey, I invite you to join the Where Hearts Rest community. This is a space for hearts seeking healing, learning to love themselves, finding the courage to choose what truly fits their soul. Leave a comment below and share what resonated with you most in today's conversation. Maybe your story will be the light someone else needs to see. And if you know someone who needs to hear these words, please share this video with them. Not to change them, but to let them know they're not alone. Before we part ways, I want to leave you with a blessing. May you have the courage to listen to the whispers of your soul. May you have the wisdom to know the difference between love and attachment. May you have the compassion to love yourself the way you love those most dear to you. And may you remember that you deserve happiness. Not fake happiness, not temporary happiness, but deep, lasting happiness that comes from living true to your authentic nature. I'm your host here at Where Hearts Rest, and thank you for taking this time to listen. Remember, your heart knows the way home. Trust it. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, be gentle with yourself